now.
Up next on Inside ChampCar, the art of adaptation. Welcome to Inside ChampCar. I'm Brian Bielanski. He's Bill Strong.
Hey.
We still haven't found a really awesome way to do that other than, hey.
Hey.
This week's episode, multi-discipline racing guru and master storyteller Johan Schwartz. How you doing, sir?
Hey, doing great. Glad to be here.
So I don't know why I'm more happy to have you here, Johan, because you can teach us something about driving race cars, or you can just tell us stories. I think I just want to sit back, crack open an adult beverage, and listen to you tell stories, because that's last time you were on the show, we did a lot of that, and that was a ton of fun.
Yeah, that was a ton of fun. It's always fun, right?
Yeah.
And I'm glad you enjoy my stories.
Well, I mean, they're fantastic.
My family's sick of them. No.
Well, whether they're true or not, it doesn't really matter because they're good stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things we wanted to talk about today was, because we've had you on before, and we talked about the world records, we talked about the drifting, we talked about you doing the stuff with ChampCar. You race a lot of stuff. And we've got drivers in ChampCar who maybe go from one car to another car. You know, maybe one weekend they'll be in a Porsche Boxster, the next weekend they might be in an Opel. No, they would never get into an Opel GT.
Wait.
They want to finish, right?
Exactly.
In stream. Start this over again.
So you do a lot of stuff, and you race a lot of different things. And I'm curious about your, I hate to use the word process because that sounds real wonky, but how do you prepare to go from one type of car to another type of car from weekend to weekend?
But not just one type of car, not just one type of car, but also the type of racing. You go drifting, you go racing up mountains, Pikes Peak, to road courses, to whatever, rally racing, right?
Yeah, well, that's been a while since I've done that, but I will be starting to do some rallycross. So we'll be doing that in the same vehicle I went up Pikes Peak. So I guess the long and the short story of that's kind of been my life, right? I've had some opportunities that I had to jump into, and I had to just kind of adapt to it. That was my kind of like thing to do when I had the opportunity to go into a car and just have to deal with what I was dealt. And so you always want to keep in mind, and ultimately a car has, one steering wheel, right? And back in the days that we all started racing, it had, the gear shifter and then 4 tires. And then you try to manage the grip level of those 4 tires. And so by me as a kid, driven all different kind of cars, that was basically the ChampCar. Back in Denmark, that's how I started racing on dirt with a Saab 96 with an engine swap. I couldn't believe that actually became a thing. So we put a V6 in what was a V4, but it was a 4 transmission. So it could accommodate an all steel heads and steel block. Imagine what that thing weighed, right? And we put that Saab 96, and then I raced that in the equivalent of ChampCar Rallycross in Denmark, so all different levels of changing surfaces, the track changed lap to lap. And so it was all about always accommodating to what you were given the next lap. And then, I drove other people's cars, whether it was rear wheel drive, I drove go-karts, I drove on ice. So it was kind of like the thing that I just kind of jumped from car to car without necessarily thinking about it being a big deal, because that's just what I did. And then the funny thing is I told Randy, I will have to tell you a story. So if Randy's listening now, I would like you to tell the story now. But I was at a World Challenge race, and I was racing some open wheel. I came to the States and started racing open wheel. and some Spec Miata. And I was at a World Challenge race, and Randy's name came up, and I realized Randy was racing in two different classes. He was racing in a GT car in a Porsche, rear wheel drive, rear engine, and he was racing a Mazda. I think it was a Mazda 6 for a team called TriPoint. So that's a front wheel drive, and that was on Toyo. Back then was probably equivalent to 200 treadwear tires, right? And the other one was on slick tires. So he just did that on the same weekend. And I'm like, I want to be like Randy. That's how, so, this is way before Randy and I even knew each other. So
you wanted to be like Randy without the vortex of danger, right?
That is true.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
But I think Randy has done a good job. That's part of why he's kept racing for as long, right? He understood the vortex of danger and when to do the pass and when not to do it. So I admire him for all the articles that he's written too. So obviously he's funny, he's well written, and he has a really good understanding about what racing is all about and how to kind of do it at a pro level and at a grassroots level. So how he has evolved as he has in his years is pretty amazing. But anyway, so I always wanted to be able to do that. And in my role as driving the race cars that I do, and I do a fair amount of coaching. As a matter of fact, just got back from Road Atlanta and going to CMP tomorrow, and then going to Barber over the weekend. So is obviously I deal with a lot of different platforms in the customers that I'm racing. So it becomes a prerequisite for me to go out in these cars and, put a data lab down, right? Either take my customer for a ride if they have a passenger seat so they can see what the car is capable of, collect data. So it's just really something I have always been able to do, and also been able to put my mind to, and not get confused with, is it a front wheel drive, is it rear wheel drive? Because you have people that says, I can't drive that car, it's a front wheel drive car, I don't know how to drive front wheel drive car. And ultimately there's not really that much difference. There could be some small nuances in how you have to trail brake the front wheel drive, possibly all the way in. Obviously you can't necessarily throttle steer it. If you try to throttle steer that, you'll pick up an understeer. So there's those things you got to keep in mind with when you jump from platform to platform. I also do a fair amount of karting to stay in shape. As a matter of fact, I did about an hour and a half today.
In like a whole hour and a half without stopping?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, I did stop because
Okay.
I drink a fair amount. So I have to stop every once in a while because I don't want to get dehydrated. So,
Right.
But I think I stopped 2 or 3 times in that, but it, quick.
Wow.
And then drink and then back in again. And again, adapting to that. And I will tell you, because it's a 4-stroke, fairly torquey, and the surface is not, very grippy. So it's the same kind of throttle technique, right? It's the same thing of working within the limit of the tire, whether you're driving a go-kart or a car. So I just try to really apply those all basic principles to what I'm driving, and then get feedback on what the car and the tires are telling me, and then adapt to that. So
what's your favorite series that you've ever been in?
What is my favorite series? I don't know if I want to say a favorite one. They all have their own little, pluses, right? I always like to race in a sense at a pro level, to see where you're at really against, some of the best guys in the country on a road course, and always try to measure yourself against those guys. But I know we are talking, on the ChampCar channel here, but I will tell you, I enjoy racing in the ChampCar. It's so friendly. There's not a lot of pressure. Everybody has good camaraderie. And so, they all have their pluses and quote unquote minuses. So you just put the hat on that you're racing and take the best from there. A lot less pressure, obviously, but SRO is racing. It's obviously a lot higher pressure.
So you talk about, it's not high pressure, but for guys like me racing against you guys, this is our Indy 500. This is as high as we're ever going to get in racing. And for us, it is a lot of pressure. It's like, but then I talk to you, I talk to Randy, I talk to, Bill Riley and, a bunch of the other pro racers. And it's like, that has got to be a ton of pressure, because if you don't perform, you don't get paid. You don't, it's just bad with us. Yeah. We get to
really, yeah. You can have a bad day, and you can maybe have, where you do an off or whatever it may be. Right. But it's one of those things that easily gets off. You put a flyer together, or did you see that oversteer, or did you see how well he pulled the tire to the absolute maximum G? Nobody can see that, right? But everybody can see maybe you go off the track, or if you hit something, right? So it's amazing. You can talk 10 years later and people remember those. It sits on the back of their mind, right? They'll forget their wife's birthday, but they'll remember if somebody went off the track.
Yes.
You mentioned two things that I found real interesting. You mentioned about people who like, I can't drive that because it's a front wheel drive and I'm a rear wheel drive, whatever. Do you find that you're better understanding of maybe the cars you're racing against when you know that maybe how a front wheel drive drives versus a rear wheel drive? So when you're trying to get around a guy, when you're trying to measure up for a pass, that you're going to know that one car is going to put the power down at a different spot, and you can use that to your advantage because you drive so many things.
So the answer is yes and no. It's not so much that it's a different platform that they drive. Obviously, if it's in the rain, there will be an advantage to a front wheel drive, everything else being equal, right? You can put power down without consequences and all that. But what I have learned over the years is reading the car in front of me. And that is really more important than what it is that I'm up at, whether it's all-wheel, front wheel, or rear wheel drive. But I'm looking at the slip angle. I'm looking at the person's turn in, right? Are they abrupt? Are they aggressive? Do they bang the curbs? Do they, start blocking you? And then David Loring, who's no longer unfortunately with us, he started talking about that when he was behind the car, he was reading slip angles. It was something I'd never done. And I'm like, I want to be able to do that, right? So now I started reading the attitude of the car and the tires and how much they are trying to hang on before they give up. So I can read how aggressive and how much they're trying to go to the limit and when they may give up the limit, right? So that is more what I will read as opposed to what kind of drive it is, but more the attitude of the car. I can see if the car is angry by the attitude, right? I can see if it's obviously being very driving carefully and smooth and all that. So there's a lot of things. And that's what I think is super important that people can take away from this when they're coming up on a car and they're about to set somebody up for a pass. Try to pay attention to, as you're coming up on a car, what it is that you may be dealing with. You're faster, but what are you going to do to get by the car?
Right.
Does that car or driver is going to give you the point by, which is the smart thing to do in endurance racing, right? If you're not there 2 laps ago and you're there now, point by, make it easy. Both of you lose as little time as possible, or will they start blocking you because they see they're in Class A, you're coming up as a Class A car. There might be $8 left, but let me see if I can keep it behind me,
When you get into a car for the first time that you've never been in before, how do you measure that car up? You may have 20 minutes of practice in a car, and then the next time you're in the car, it's going to be in a race. What is your system for figuring out what you have to do to make that car go fast?
So what I try to feel out very quickly as I go out, right? You warm up the tires and you start feeling, and you get an idea what the car is turning. Maybe, warming it up, feeling the brakes. Is there one end that's going to lock up before the other one? Whatever, the balance is, right? And then you start feeling how it feels on the trail braking. What is the car, if it's going to start being, as you come off the brakes, is the back end going to step out? Or do you need to keep the brakes on for a little bit? So you start to feel out all these little nuances, what the car likes, right? Then you start going a little bit faster and you start feeling how it handles in high speed, right? How does it take a set? Like, does it start rolling over the rear? Is the rear starting to get loose, right? So You slowly build up so you can start driving. You don't need to drive at 100% to start feeling what the attitude is going to be. And that was the slip angle I was talking about before. You know, the car doesn't need to slide, but you can start feeling which end is asking for more slip to maintain the grip. So that will kind of give you an idea about which end is going to give out. And then you start pushing it. You start braking deeper. You start feeling what the balance is again as you start coming off the brakes. And you start to register that as you're driving the car and then working with the car within those limits. And that's another thing that I've had to do for many years is when I've co-drive with people that in their cars, right, they've set it up to their liking, or this is how it's set up. So now I have to work within the parameters of that car to drive it, to the best of the ability of.
That was going to actually be my next question. So you come to a team that's pretty established with the people who are in that team. They've got their car, so it works well for them. Have you ever gotten into a car and just taken 3 or 4 laps and go, man, this thing's just junk?
Yeah, I have. Especially so that, there's cars that if you start driving them, you drive them at the 80% or whatever, it doesn't show. When you start driving one closer to the limit, the attitude of the car is going to change. And that's where things can become edgy, right? And one of it can be that it's very loose, right? Or that it is that it's start becoming pushy, and it doesn't matter what you do, it'll always be pushy, right? So if you have a chance, it's always, I try to give them ideas about maybe some change that can be done without having to put the car up on scales. Maybe it has adjustable shocks that we can put on there. Or that adjustable shocks, we can play with the shocks or the sway bar, right? Or we can change maybe the corner balance if it has coilovers on there without necessarily putting it on the scales, but just make a small change. So it doesn't become a nuisance for the team to do it, but it's something that maybe can get the car in a better direction. Some guys may not be able to feel it, or they feel it, but they don't know what they can do or need to do to make it handle better, right? So
they don't, or they just don't know any better.
Correct.
That's a lot of it. Yeah, we only know what we've driven.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, yep.
So, do you ever get the opportunity to do teams bring you in and say, just tell us what to do with this car, and we're going to make it the way you like it, and then see if we can drive it?
Yeah. I've done that, but a lot of times I don't necessarily put it exactly how I like it, because I like it sometimes most of the time a little bit on the loose side, and that is not always good to drive on the loose side if you are uncomfortable getting an oversteer. There's far higher consequences with a car that's sliding than a car that goes into an understeer when it gets pushed, right? Which end gives up first? And I like to have it slightly loose in the back. And so I try to either get the car neutral or understeer, depending on what I feel or what they're asking me, or if I worked with that person before to the level they are at, right? So they are comfortable. So maybe the car can be faster by being a tiny bit loose or free on the back, but they can't utilize that because they will pucker up as soon as it goes into, and now they will start going slower, and they will actually, it's the equivalent of somebody going into a corner and going into a slide because they broke too late and started releasing the brakes and the rear end gave up, right? Now it takes a little time for them to kind of reset their mind to go back to where they were before when they were faster, but they don't want to get into the situation again where the car is loose. So I try not to make it so it's really edgy most of the time for the people that I set up cars for.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
The guy who set the world record for drifting likes his car a little loose. Does that shock you?
It doesn't. It's I've been behind him when he's driven, not for long, but I've been behind him when he's driven. So
again, let's just make sure it's not drifting through the corners, right?
Right.
It's working at that fine angle of slip where you can get the car pointed, right? Sometimes just a few more degrees sometimes. So you can get early on power out of the corner, and yeah.
Well, we've set up the MR2 where it was just absolutely brilliant in the dry, and then once one drop of rain hits the track, please let me out of this car now. It's just, yeah, it's so bad. So how do you set up do you tell a team how to set up the car to be kind of neutral, for all weather? I mean, every car.
Well, so, a lot of times you would make some change if it starts raining. It depends on how much time you have, right? If it all of a sudden starts raining, and you may just have time to disconnect the sway bars and maybe soften up the shocks, right? You don't have time to put softer springs in, but if it's going to rain for sure the following day, right, you may be able to soften up the whole platform.
But we say this too because we know there's a lot of teams out there that take their car to their local alignment shop to have the alignment done. So when they get to the track, there's really no playing around. It is
Correct.
what it is, and that's how we're going to race it.
Correct. And a lot of times, so in pro racing, you're looking for a car to be handled good throughout the 1 hour race on a brand new set of tires, right? And you want the tire to be happy throughout that whole time. So the car, every time that we go for practice, it goes wheels off, it gets on the setup wizard, that bolted on the scales, you test all, and you get the set down so we can see where it now is. Because if I'm saying that I would like to have something else different to the car, let's see where it comes in at. Maybe it's something that moved, right? And then we do the set down, and if everything comes out as we went out on track, we'll then make our change. And it could be depending on what the attitude is. So I know I'm touching on a lot of different things. So it depends on what team I'm in a sense driving with. If there is an engineer on the team, I will tell the person or the engineer what the car is doing. And then a lot of times we'll then discuss what it is that could be done to correct it. But it's not something I have an ultimate say in.
Right.
We'll talk about it. And then
do the engineers say you don't know what you're talking about?
Well, maybe when it comes to the setup suggestion, right? Hopefully they trust what I say, but how the car drives out there.
Right.
So sometimes, yeah. So I've driven all they want to know is how's the car feeling, and once I tell them, then they'll make the change. When it comes to club racers, stuff, the grassroots stuff, then I may suggest to them how to get rid of what they may be dealing with, why the car's not handling right.
So with all your experience at the pro level, you've got pro teams who've got engineers. Sometimes they have engineers who specialize in different parts of the car. There's that many engineers. They have access to shaker rigs. They have access to all of the data from all this time. When you get into one of the grassroots series cars, like a ChampCar, what is the thing you find from the setup standpoint that is the most common thing that they might have off just a little bit because they don't have access to all of that technology when they're or experience when they're setting up the cars?
So, I would probably say a majority of the teams may not use scales properly, right? Or not use scales at all.
Sure.
So some of that corner or the handling that they're dealing with could be potentially, corrected with a sway bar change, but that is just a Band-Aid. Whereas it may be because the car is out of quarter balance. So that is something. It could be that sometimes the springs are not correct. And they may not know exactly what it is that causes what they're dealing with, and it could be springs. And that's the thing that is, the beauty of race cars, right? It's not always one solution to a problem, right? And once you make one change, that can change something else, right? They will never be the same, right? Two cars that are set up the exact same way will handle differently, right? So they will have different personalities. So, but I would say that, but that being said, with whether it's a spring set up or sometimes it can be shocks that are worn out or not, on the pro team, you would send the shocks off and they get dynoed, right? So we know what the clicks actually does for impact. Mm-hmm. A lot of times when I come to a team where the shocks set, they're set in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. We set them in the middle. That's kind of like a good starting point, right? And that's where they leave them. And then you can start working. And some of it depends on how the car turns in. We'll work with the pump or the rebound. depending on what it is in the front, power down, whatever it may be. So there's, depending on what adjustability they have. I will say there's a lot of platforms, and the Miata and the BMWs being part of that. The DNA is pretty good. So, if you get the alignment correct on them and kind of like the distance between the tire and the fender well somewhat the same, they actually are pretty good handling cars.
So would you say the number one tip would be get them on scales and use the scales properly?
Yeah, I would say make sure the car is so what you have, right? That you're not trying to fix something that could have been fixed with a proper corner balance, right? Mm-hmm. So you have good cross in the car. You can shoot for a 50, or if you're turning a little bit one way, you would have cross set one way, so it turns a little bit better one way versus the other way, right? If it's if it is mainly a right-hand corner, you set it up where you can set it up, right, so it turns in a little bit better, and you give a little bit up in the left-hand corners.
Yeah, I didn't realize how powerful those scales were when I first bought mine, and luckily my cross weights were perfect. I mean, it just blew us away that they were so close. Everybody looked at me like, "What'd you do?" I said, "Nothing. I just put it on the scales." But it was luck. But there were, one of the Opal we put on the scales. No, it was way, way off, and like it's twisted off. But it didn't matter. It's so slow, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, well, at that speed, I think it was okay. Yeah. You probably couldn't feel that it was off, right?
Turn left perfect, but right, you had to actually work a little bit. But
okay, so you can see what it matters there. Yeah.
Now you've you own, last year you set a world record with the electrical vehicle fastest single lap at VIR, the Lightning course, running a Porsche Taycan Turbo S. You broke it by 4 seconds.
Actually, no, I ran a Tesla Plaid and beat the Porsche.
Oh,
yeah.
Now I read the whole sentence now. Yes.
Yes.
So what is that like driving, going from, a gasoline powered car, even a diesel car, over to electric on a track like that?
Well, I will tell you. So just if we back up a little bit, I had been in a friend of mine's, actually a guy that I instructed or coached, and he had one of those Teslas, and he said, "You got to come and try it," and he put obviously the thing in ludicrous mode when we took off from 0 to 60, right? And it was the first car that I've been in that had me feeling like I was on roller coaster. It was a little scary, kind of like, wow, it is fast.
Yeah.
So hadn't really driven much electrical then. Then this friend of mine bought a Plaid and got to go on the Lightning course. He entered the car for the Lightning course, called me up and asked if I wanted to drive it for him so we could go for the EV record. And I will tell you, before I got in the car, I was actually like, what is it going to feel like when I start accelerating out of corners? Am I going to be like sitting, with that face that, on the acceleration, right? And once the car obviously was going at a certain speed, right, the acceleration is not nearly as violent, right, because you are not from a standstill. But, going back to how this whole thing started out, right, that was certainly something I had to adapt to. It was 5,000 pounds, right? So I want to get the pendulum going. I don't know if you saw the video, but I did get the pendulum going up to the S's a little bit, where the car got sideways on me. And, that's not optimal for fast lap time, right?
Especially going to the S's.
No, it's not. Now, that happened to be the fastest time because everywhere else we started pushing it. Right. And and that was another, with the 5,000 pounds, didn't do lateral, and we were on 340 treadwear tires. It was hard tires compared to, a 200 treadwear, right? So it was all about kind of like the rain line a little bit, spend as little time in the corner as possible and really use it where it's fast to get the car turned and then accelerate out of there and use the, I guess, I believe it's about 1,000 horsepower that it does up when it has full full power on there. So we had one lap after each charge that we could go for a fast lap time.
So what was that like with the, we know what, I know what the acceleration is like on that, not plaid, ludicrous speed I've done, but not plaid. But I know what that's kind of like, and it does tear you up inside just from the brute force. But a 5,000-pound car on these little tiny brakes, and I guess it's using regenerative braking too to help brake the car.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. I don't know how much regen that it actually is able to in track mode, but that was my big, and it was good that it was actually on the lightning course, right? Because now from Oak Tree, I didn't go all the way down to turn 14, right? So I didn't have those extra 20 miles an hour. Right. So instead of going 150 or 145 that I was going into when I went on Patriot, it could have been 100 and I think 162 is what we were going into turn 1 at.
Wow.
Ooh. Yeah.
That was on South Course. That's where we're racing next weekend. So, wow.
Yeah. No, so 155 or 152 going into Patriot and then 160 or whatever it was going into turn 1 on South. Which one is it? There's South is,
and goes on Patriot and then kind of goes up the S's.
Yeah, then it goes up the S's and then it goes back on the North Course, right?
I'm so confused.
No, that's South Course or North Course goes on North Course.
Yeah, where's the main pattern?
On North.
Yes.
Oh, so correct. You're doing North Course.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
So the Lightning course is the full course incorporating Patriot.
Oh, that's the full. Okay, they call it Lightning
Yes.
course. Okay, that's the full course. So
that's the full course.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, we've run the 24-hour on that a couple of times.
Yes.
Yep. I never liked it. I think it really takes away from it, but there's a lot of guys that do.
Yeah.
We're commenting here in a minute.
Yeah.
So are you going to
nuances?
Are you going to be at VIR this weekend with ChampCar?
No, I'm going to be at Barber.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a rough job. I mean, VIR, Barber, they're two great places to be at.
Sure.
But since you've got a record at VIR, you clearly know how to go fast there. What do you think is? And you're on the full course this weekend, right, Bill?
Yeah, South Course.
Okay.
The little Oak Tree, that part of it.
Okay. What's the key at VIR to go fast?
More gas, less brake. No.
Yeah.
So the South Course is obviously using part of Patriot. So getting back up the hill, when you go from Patriot back onto the South Course to go up towards when you run on a full course called turn 10, which is that left-hander, which is now an easy flat, right? So, and you're going up the hill. So exit speed coming out of there is very important. And then rolling some speed into the first part of the Oak Tree and then setting up. A lot of people turn in too early for Oak Tree. And they try to roll too much speed into Oak Tree and then they can't get back on the gas soon enough. Or as soon as you should be able to get the straightaway speed down. So it's important to sacrifice the Oak Tree and get a good late apex and early power.
Do you think people turn in early for Oak Tree more so now that the Oak Tree is gone because they've lost their sight line and their reference point?
Well, the whole turn's different now.
I know.
It is, and people talk about it being different, that they have. It really, for some reason, it didn't change me. I don't know why, but I didn't really get missing one or the other. So I don't know if people, but in general, so let's go back to that because I think there are people that hopefully will have a takeaway from this. When you are turning for a late apex, which is Oak Tree, you are slowing the car down, you're turning the car, getting rid of, as I say, a lot of radius, get a lot of the turning done so you can start opening the steering wheel as you exit out of there. The moment where you are slowing the car down for that late apex, there is something in your head that says, I am not pushing the car hard enough. You're not using the car up where you are feeling you are leaving time on the table. As opposed to when you come in and turn in early and you use the car and the tire turning in, then you sit on that left front for a long time, and then you get on power. Now you feel like you have used that tire at 100% all the way through the corner. Whereas by the later apex, you felt you left some time on the table and your body did not register. Because it's hard to register, you have to look at the clock. Or you look at the speedometer at a certain place on the track, certain fixed point where, let's say, the timing and scoring tower, and you can see that you are actually 1 or 2 miles an hour faster by doing the late apex versus hustling the car all the way through the corner. And it's something to that degree that people need to kind of know that this is going to be better for lap time. It's going to be safer because a late apex allows you options on the other side. If you turn in early, there is no fixing really.
Right.
Early in, early off, right? Whereas with a late apex, it leaves you options on the exit. You can see through the corner better, and you can steer the car around something should there be something, that no matter what corner you're at, right? So that I think is a good takeaway. And I think when I have worked with some people and I say, you got to be more patient on your turn in, later turn in, get rid of radius so you can come out of there faster. And a lot of times it's like, well, I catch up to my competitor on the entry of the corner. Yes, if the start finish line was there, you would be, but it's not.
But it's not,
it
right.
continues down, and then they take off, and now you get behind again. And what does people do? They try to hustle the thing on entry again because they gain a little bit of, so it's having to turn that around in your head.
Right.
I know we're touching on a different subject.
No, it's
but
great.
It's something that I wanted to mention in this conversation, where people that are driving those 2 hour stint, an hour and a half, however long they go, can try to work on that, where they really say, okay, I'm going to try to work on the late apex, early power, unwind the steering wheel, good balance in the car, and not feeling like I'm about to go off on exit every time with steering in and the car not doing what I wanted to do and not feeling like I'm binding it up, right? Try to take that and try to implement that.
Something has just dawned on me. The first day of driver school, the first thing they tell you is the most important corner on the racetrack is the one leading onto the longest straightaway, which is obviously true. But when that straightaway is also uphill, it's even more important.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's what Oak Tree is.
That's what Oak Tree is, and that's what the corner is now for South Course, right? Is going back onto the full course up to turn 10, right? Is all uphill too,
right?
And the student I was working with yesterday for Road Atlanta in the 10A, 10B. So people that have just been there,
right?
Is that they will overslow a little bit in turn 10A, so they get the urge to get back on the gas. They get back on the gas. Now the front end lifts up, right? Now the front won't do as much work. Now you got to get the front end down so you can get the front tires to turn in. So a long lift for 10B. But what do you enter when you go into 10B? The uphill. So now, to your point again, Brian, each time it's uphill, it costs you even more.
Right. Well,
if you have to lift.
And 10A in my mind was always the throwaway. But really, you got to throw both of them away to get on the gas early enough out of 10B to go up under that hill. Because if you don't get on the gas early enough, you lose all your momentum going up the hill. And that's a really steep hill because you don't realize that before they had 10A, 10B, because you were just coming with everything you got. But that hill is so much steeper coming out of 10B, and you don't realize it. So you have to get on the gas really early going into 10B and really late apex, so you get that pull up the hill.
Correct.
Good stuff.
So if you are now aware of that, and next time you would go there, right? Then think about that. If I have to lift to get the car to turn in for 10B too much, right? Then try to balance it a little bit earlier and then pick up the throttle just a little, so you are focusing on when can I get the earliest to full throttle, instead of charging it in there and then having to lift and then back on the gas. You feel like you're driving and you can't drive the car any harder. Driving like that, you are correct. But there's an alternative, and that is backing it up a little bit so you can get sooner on the gas.
Okay.
And one thing that when people get that, right, that they're like, wow, there's the aha moment, right?
Nothing's more cool, Bill, than when a guy like Johan says I was correct.
Yeah.
It'll never happen again.
Hit the silence button. We call that a sneeze. Yeah. No. So with another race coming up, we have 130 cars signed up for Daytona, which is nothing. It's at the 130 cars at Daytona is not. You won't even notice them out there. You'll have so much space in between you. What in less than 2 minutes, give me a tip for Daytona. Where do our drivers mess up the most there?
So there can be a little bit of consequence, right? No, nothing is without consequence, but one place that there is, because you can't see what's coming across on the other side in the beginning, is turn one. A lot of people brake too early for turn one, so that can be compressed a little bit. And the horseshoe, that focusing on rolling the speed again back to the thing and then getting out. Try to get to a little bit later than you think the initial part of the horseshoe is going to be, so you can get the car turned. So apex, so you get in and stay tight for apex number 2 and 3, and then you can really start opening up for, basically probably the longest straightaway that is on ChampCar schedule, right? Which is the oval.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for that Le Mans straight or whatever they call it. Somebody's already altered our image, by the way. They've not Le Mans.
Well, it's now called the Le Mans chicane.
Yeah, chicane. That's right. Yeah,
Le Mans chicane, right? I still call it the bus stop.
I know.
My problem with turn one at Daytona is that's the one, like you said, consequences. That's the one. I feel like I can make mistakes in other spots, but you make a mistake in turn one, you can pull up the car really easy.
You can. Fortunately, they made some changes in, I don't know how many years ago now, but there was a lot higher consequence. They have little bit of a runoff area, right. But and people, don't like to go high in the initial part of the entry of turn one, but that can really gain you some lap time. So there's some passing opportunities there for sure, being on the outside, even passing on the outside. And then the dog leg, right? Really position the car well to the right, and then hitting the apex and then tracking all the way. There's a lot of people on the exit that don't track. So if they don't use all the track, that kind of, that then becomes a tighter radius, right? Now you can't roll the same amount of speed, and it is a fast corner through there. And then turn 6, which leads on to that back straightaway. So that is really an important corner. Again, sacrifice a little bit on the entry, get the car pointed, and get early on the gas and get out, because that leads down to the bus stop. So
now, does drafting play into our type of racing, endurance racing?
Absolutely, very much so. Yeah, very much so. So, and I think let's bring back. So we're talking lap time here, right? So in general, it's all about the traffic management, right? It doesn't matter how fast you are if you hit somebody or hit the wall, right? So I think in any type of this type of racing, it is also important to, if you're being passed, to help out the person that's passing you, so you both lose the least amount of lap time, right? And be predictable, because obviously there are some corners that where it looks like there's an opening, right? And then it closes up because it leads to the next corner. So you really have to be predictable, and obviously the person hopefully can read what is coming up and not sticking their nose in. I think in general, every time that I raced, I've always had people kind of get it, right? And I think one of the main reasons is because they also have a buddy that wants to drive, right? Yeah. So, I mean, they are, you don't want to go home and the other guy's not having driven.
Do you have any thoughts on sizing up people versus, as far as when there's 120 cars on the track at Daytona and, you're not dealing with, folks who are working and, driving in IMSA or in a World Challenge where they've probably have a good amount of experience before they get there. Most of them. There's still some yahoos in those series too. But you have a very varying level of experience when you go on to a ChampCar race, and even WRL and some of these other ones. Do you treat that differently in an overtaking situation when you don't know what the experience level is of the guy or gal you're trying to overtake?
Yeah. So it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. Was I try to size them up as I come up on them, right? What is it that the car is showing me that how that driver is driving it, and do I want to try to pass them in an outbraking maneuver, or where it's safer to try to wait a couple of corners and then beat them on the exit, so you're doing it down the straightaway, right? So I've tried to size them up, and to your point, Brian, I mean, people are like, I've heard it many times, I don't know if I'm driving this series again because, there's people out there with not much experience, and I can tell you they're everywhere.
Yeah. I've heard the same thing on IMSA drivers and IMSA races.
Absolutely.
Especially at like the Rolex 24, when you've got twice as many drivers as are normally in those cars. It's a very similar situation. There's people who will buy a ride. There are people who have never been in that car before that weekend, and in that particular case, there's got to be some similarities as well.
There is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, Bill, I'm going to go with the story time before we let Johan go, okay? Yeah, because I've never done Pikes Peak. I want to do it. Scares the dickens out of me, the thought of Pikes Peak. What's it like going fast up Pikes Peak? I know it's not a ChampCar thing, Bill, but I gotta ask.
Oh, no, that's I don't like heights. I despise heights, especially when Paul sends me up to the top of Daytona to put a camera, or Watkins Glen. But yeah, I'm curious at that too, because I've watched those videos from the 70s. Yuri Yakinen, whatever his name was, going up in his what was that, not Opel, Audi.
Yep.
Yeah.
Johan Rindt and
just some of those cars are just insane, and there's no guardrails, and you just see sky.
Yeah. So when I was doing it, so I was driving. The morning. So the event starts basically. The race itself is on Saturday, and 4 days prior to that. So that would be Tuesday. Is it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Yeah. So there's 4 practice days prior to the event, and that's always. It is a tourist attraction. It's a national park.
Right.
So we get to practice. A third of the hill in the morning from, I think, we get up there when it's pitch dark. And then as soon as the sun comes out, we start practicing till, I believe it's 8 o'clock, till they have to open the drive up for tourists. The only time that the hill gets closed is on that Saturday when you do from start to finish.
Sure.
And that's the only time that, as a participant, you drive the whole thing, right? So you will start off at a stage, and the first part of the hill will be one part, which is also part of qualifying. And then you'll drive the middle stage, and then obviously the last stage, and then you combine it at the end of the day. Each time when the practices were over, I would then drive a rental car in the following day stage. So I would really get that down. There's 156 corners. Right. So there's a lot of corners to keep track of. And to be honest with you, cannot keep track of all the corners. So the corners that I kept track of was the one that was blind on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And some of them were blind on the other side, with a decreasing radius corner. So if you stayed flat, you would go off the hill, right? And some of them were open, so you could stay full gas, even though you may not know that you could have, unless you obviously recognize the corner. So I was trying to really work on the ones that either had consequence or no consequence, so I could learn what I needed to do with the car.
Right.
So those rides that I did in the rental car almost was scarier than in the car itself. Because once you're in the car and you're driving, right, you're focused on one thing, and that is the track. You're not looking over the side of the hill. Now, when you're driving the rental car at the 30, 35 miles an hour, you have time to look. And every once in a while you look down and there's like, just a couple minutes ago, I was down there, right? And you see these little Matchbox cars down there, right? So that's the kind of like what kind of brings things into a reality of here is some serious consequences because there is no guardrail.
Right. All the rental car companies just banned you from renting cars in Colorado Springs and Denver from now on.
Well, remember, I wasn't going at race speed. I was going 35 miles an hour.
Sure you weren't.
But what I did do was when I drove down, up and then back down, up again, the brakes did take a beating, because obviously trying to, go up and, go back down again because obviously some of it has quite the incline.
Yeah, and trying to keep that car at 35 miles an hour, that's just
exactly.
Rough.
Yeah.
Now, we have the Blue Ridge Parkway right down across the street from me. So, yeah, we do those 25-mile-an-hour sections.
Dear iRacing, if you're listening, put Pikes Peak on iRacing.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Yeah.
I don't race, but yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was trying to, obviously when I was going out there, I was trying to find a video game, and I found I can't even remember what it was, but I tried to learn the corners from it. But it would be cool if it was on iRacing for sure. And I'm surprised it's not.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So, and then one of the practice days, I just want to also tell, I was on the. You guys have ever seen that video, a YouTube video with that Mitsubishi that just rolls and rolls and rolls?
I think we all have.
Yes.
And I was going up the hill. So our second day practice was on that section, and it was raining. And I'm coming up. So this is this motorcycle powered car that bounces. I mean, it sounds awesome bouncing off the side of the mountain, right? And you can hear it up there turning 16,000 RPMs. And I'm coming around a corner, and I know what the corner is. And I'm like, maybe. And I kind of start squeezing the power in, and I pick up an understeer. And there is just the side of the road, right? And it's like getting off the gas, please grip, please grip, please grip. So, it was one of those that was like, wow, that could have been big. So, yeah. So it, but that's kind of what makes it also what it is, right?
That's the whole part of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
the whole
cool.
thing. So it's an amazing event. And the folks you're racing, because you're never going to battle them wheel to wheel, right? So they're all very friendly. You don't really have anybody that you have some kind of a previous experience with, and you guys, somebody doored you, right? It doesn't happen at Pikes Peaks, and you have really truly full engineering, right? There's still kind of very few rules for some of the classes. So some of the things that come out of there is pretty cool. There was a guy there that called Robin Shute is his name. I think he's been king of the mountain 2 or 3 times. And he came from England, and he was right in what would be the Charlotte of England, the head, the capital of motor racing in England with all the Formula One teams.
Right,
so imagine those guys right now, they're kind of within some rules within Formula One, and then they can help this guy with all the engineering and all the downforce and everything, right? So some interesting stuff is really coming out of that, which is cool that they can kind of be creative.
Sure.
Yeah.
Bill, anything else before we let Johan go?
Nah, can't wait to see him on the track again, though. It's fun. It's fun sitting there working, and Johan comes up and scares the hell out of me.
But when you drive the oval, I like to scare, got to have some excitement in that car because it's not really driving that fast, right? So
is it even driving? Is it even driving?
All right, let's get you into a car you've never been in before. What's the one ChampCar car that you haven't driven that you want to drive? And then I'm sure that team's listening.
Well, it would be Bill Riley's Corvette.
Okay.
We all want to drive that.
We all want to drive that. I was fortunate enough. Was it 4, 5, 6 years ago when he had the Probe and we won the 24-hour? So I drove it with him. Actually, he wasn't there, but that was the Riley team that was there, and I drove it in the car there, and it was so much fun. And I can only see, when Bill puts his, mind to it and starts doing stuff, right? So it's pretty. But there's, there's really some cool cars now, within the ChampCar series, right? So, the team I was driving for in the 24-hour had a really nice, super reliable, well-built, super. Was a BMW that, ran the set lap times from the green flag till the checkered flag.
Yep.
And everybody had a great time. So
good stuff.
It's cool to see the people that are building cars and doing a good job at it too.
All right, Johan, thanks a lot. We appreciate you coming on with us. You're welcome back anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime. Thank you. And have fun up at VIR.
That's the plan. Yeah. All right. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, see you guys. Thank you. Good night.
All right. So, Bill, we got VIR coming up this weekend. I'm sure you've got lots of stuff going on to make that thing happen. What are we looking at for VIR?
Well, I got a tech tip too, by the way.
Oh, well, let's do the tech tip at the end.
Okay, and we'll do that. That gave me 20 seconds here to get the stuff up. So we have 42 cars entered now for VIR. A lot of team cars, not a ton of team cars like we have at Daytona and a couple other tracks coming up, but a lot of new teams it looks like, and that'll go into our tech tip, by the way.
Okay.
But lots going on this weekend. We have Flagtronics updates we have to do, so go to flagtronics.com/ChampCar. Download the do the up, or you can download the firmware update, or you can download the latest device manager. Plug your GoPro. Plug your Flagtronics into it, because GoPro won't do anything.
No, don't plug that in.
Plug it in, and it'll say, "Hey, there's a new update," and do it. And we fixed some stuff from Road Atlanta. I think they did some other things as well that they learned at a race in between us that they use Flagtronics at other events.
Sure.
So yeah, just make sure you do that. We're also going to be doing them at the track, so don't worry if you can't get to it. Just make sure we have access to your USB plug that you use to plug into power, because we'll plug that into our laptop, download all kinds of really bad. Download the firmware to it, and that was a joke, by the way.
I got you.
Okay, yeah. So that's going on. Supplemental rules, always the same at VIR, because we go there so many times.
Right.
So you can add up to 10% antifreeze, because who knows? It may be cold. It may not be cold. Headlights are required on race cars this year, so remember that. Don't show up to a car with your race car with no lights on it. That would be bad, because you'll be trying to find lights in Danville, Virginia. We do have a new sound meter. That seems to be the hot topic the last couple of days on ChampCar Garage on Facebook. Some reason guys don't want to make their cars quiet.
Why is that?
I have no clue.
Because the vroom vroom sounds fast.
I don't know, but we kind of went into the part of, it's not just the. I posted up an article about it's not just your exhaust; it could be your intake as well.
Right.
But we found that out at Laguna and NCM too. NCM's coming up, so that is a quiet track. So, remember, track damage fees will be passed on to the teams responsible for the damage. So don't hit shit.
Oh, bah humbug!
I know. If you have an ESS fire bottle, you must take it to tech and have it weighed before every race. If you don't want to do that,
get a different fire bottle.
Buy a lifeline system. Yeah. We do. If you don't have a Flagtronics unit, you can rent them. $50. Bring a credit card. Same with transponders. $50 and credit card. Let me look here.
Where are you getting this information, Bill?
I'm getting it from the supplemental rules.
The supplemental rules.
Can you believe it? Somebody spends all day long writing these.
I am a voracious supplemental rules reader.
Yeah, you would love these. ChampCar.org/web/rule or event. No, I'm wrong.
No, you're never wrong, Bill. You're just
ChampCar.org/register/events.php. Or just go up there and just click events.
All right.
Event calendar. And that'll take you there. You'll be able to download and look at the entrance list. How many F-class cars do we have? Because that's a brand new class.
I know.
Spot Racing is an F-class car. I'd show you these. We haven't got the tech yet to show you guys all this stuff.
If you send me the stuff you want me to put up, Bill, ahead of time,
yeah,
I can have it all ready for us.
It's not like I have a regular job. What happened? We are live, right?
Yeah, we are. Should we go to the tech tip?
Oh no, I'm sorry. That's me, I think.
At least I think we're still live.
Yeah.
I hope we're still live.
And then let me make sure. I had a playback error on my side. But keep talking, Brian.
It says I'm still live, or at least I'm sending.
Yeah.
I can press some buttons and try to get there and figure out what we're doing. So, So, and then after VIR, just while you're looking at things, you've got NCM. Or no, I'm sorry, we're going to Harris Hill, then NCM, and then Daytona, which we talked about with Johan. So, got a big month of March ahead of you. It kind of gets full swing now, doesn't it? Because you've kind of had a race with a couple of weeks off, and then a race with a couple of weeks off. But now it's like you've got 1, 2, 3 week, then a week off, then you've got 2, and then a couple of weeks off. So it's full swing now.
Yeah, it's head to VIR, get home, head out to I don't know if I'm leaving Tuesday or Wednesday yet for Harris Hill, Texas.
And your wife is like, yes, he's going to be gone a lot.
It's pretty much
Yeah.
It's TV all herself, watches the housewives of some boat out in the Mediterranean somewhere.
Oh, yes, Boat Life or whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just stupid shows. Not racing.
I know.
And then go to Harris Hill, and then we'll be running the Flagtronics and the log. We're using that log system for control. Going to get into more detail with some stuff, so you might see a bit more information on there. Kelly's running timing, so she'll be busy doing that, and I'll help out with the other stuff. I'm going to try and take some pictures out there too. Got a new toy to play with.
Cool.
And then I head off to my brother's, man, for like 2 or 3 days, and then from there in Oklahoma, I'll head out to NCM. See us racing there on that track. That's the only track I've ever won on, by the way. Great track. That's Chelsea. Chelsea's has 2 races. Yeah, she's got Harris Hill and NCM. And then come home. I think we're off for a week, and then we go to Daytona.
Yeah. So, it's going to be a busy time. Lots for us to talk about. All right, should I press the button now?
Go for it.
See, now people can see all of my head bobbing with the music, which
our little dance.
They probably wish they'd never seen before and hope they'll never have to see again. All right, you got a tech tick.
Can we do an Emmy for that?
Yeah. We can go TikTok with it and go viral.
TikTok? No, that's going to be banned.
Yeah, well.
China.
The new one's going to be Talk Tick.
Talk Tick. Yeah. Hey, so, we're starting to get into summer.
Yes.
Well, depending on where you're at.
It wasn't any summer here, man. I got a story to tell you about this past weekend.
Here in Virginia, it's been 80 degrees, 70s, 80s.
Shut up.
And, out where Brian's at in Los Angeles, it's been, 5 feet of snow there down by the beach?
Not by the beach, but we got some snow.
Yeah, I have a lot of, you remember, I'm from Southern California.
I know.
So I have a lot of friends there. My dad lives up in Oroville, California, up north, and they're getting wild right now too. And so much so he gave me the combo to his camera so I can actually go see what's going on. I think he's doing that so in case he falls, I'll be able to call the cops or laugh, one of the two.
Oh.
But yeah, we have a lot of different weather.
Yes.
Extremes right now. So one of the things that happens no matter what the weather is, you start getting a lot of dehydration, hunger. We're at a racetrack, especially the guys working on the cars. We don't take care of ourselves, right?
It's true.
It's true. Very true. Best races I've ever had. My wife and kids were there taking care of me.
Yeah.
My drivers don't care about me.
No, of course not.
Just want to get in that car.
Of course not.
But we just had a team manager up here recently, Tanya. She takes care of her people as well. So make sure everybody's fed, watered. Make sure they, take a break every now and then. Just, go to the restroom, splash some water on your face, rinse off, and then come back and look at your problems with the new outlook. Yep. But take care of yourself.
And sleep.
Yes. Get some sleep. It's hard, man.
I know.
I mean, you're up till 2 a.m. and, call is at 5 a.m. to get the car started and warmed up, the tire pressures checked and all that stuff. And then your drivers start arriving. But yeah, it's take care of yourself because we don't want to see guys hauled off and to the medical.
No, for any reason.
No, but take some rest, hydrate, even in the cold. Actually, worse in the cold because it's so dry.
Right, and you don't think about it when it's cold.
Right.
We've been beaten into our heads for years. Got to drink a lot when it's hot out. Hydrate. But people don't think about it when it's cold out. And especially when you're driving a race car, you're sweating just as much, if not, well, maybe not more. But you sweat a lot even in a cold race car because you're working in there, know. And let's face it, not every amateur race car driver is the modicum of fitness. So people work hard in those race cars no matter what the temperature is.
The only good part of that when you're dehydrated, guys like our size will probably fit in the seat better.
I gotta be way dehydrated to change the way I fit in the seat. Now that might be the case for a skinny guy like you, but I'd be like a prune. I'd have to be that dehydrated before I fit in the seat better.
Now, one more tech tip.
Uh-oh.
And I'm seeing this. This is probably the most important tech tip that I'm going to give all year long.
Oh, wait a second. Hold on. This. Hold on. Any excuse to play the music again.
I was going to show you some. I was going to have a visual aid, but they're all packed up right now for VIO. One of the most important things that you guys can do is read the rule book.
Oh, yeah.
The reason I say that is because we're seeing posts up on social media where guys are like, oh, well, this and this and this. But dude, you need to read the rule book because that was changed like 10 years ago. Or the last thing they heard before they comment on the forums, please read the rule book and double check your stuff. I find myself doing that every now and then. I'll post something up and it like hasn't either never been in the rule book, which I did recently, or it was an old rule that has been changed. So read the rule book, double check your information.
And your rule book's skinny.
Yes.
My rule book and my other thing that I do is not. And it is amazing how when I'm broadcasting, they think I should know every rule that's in the rule book. And when I mess one up, man, the chat lights up.
Yeah, it's tough. But read the rule book, please. Before you make public comments, please research your answers. And
just go to Chat NPT and say, what is the ChampCar rule for fill in the blank?
Yeah, see if it does that.
I want to see what happens.
Give some NASCAR rule.
Exactly.
But yeah, make sure you read the rule book and do your research. And don't forget to like us, guys.
Oh,
I
yes.
want one of those little silver or gold plaque thingies sitting in the back of our shows here. So please like, subscribe. We're not going to spam you. We're not going to do anything funny like that. It just helps us out a ton.
I've been told the vernacular is smash the like button.
Just click the little buttons. You can do it on your TV too. I do it all the time now.
That's true.
So if you like it, please do it. I know we talk a lot, but that's what we're supposed to do, right?
That's true. That's part of the
job. And we are doing a show from VIR this weekend, ChampCar Live.
Nice.
Go champcarlive.com. It takes you straight there. We will be live sometime early in the morning because it's going to be like 9, 8.
I've got studio work to do this weekend. I will have the ChampCar Live broadcast up in the background.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks, Brian.
I love it. That's going to do it for another episode of Inside ChampCar. If you like what you heard, subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel so you won't miss any episodes. It would also be great if you would share this on your social media channels. Comment on the ChampCar Facebook page, especially if it's a good one. New episodes every week. That guy over there on that side of the screen is Bill Strong. I'm Brian Bielanski. You guys have yourself a great weekend.